All right. Okay. Hey everybody, welcome to week 6 of the art workshop. Thanks so much for your participation. Today we are at Pottville High School. Say hi everybody.
Hi.
Pottville High School, thank you so much for having us here. We are going into the home stretch of the workshop now, so this is kind of exciting time. So I really want everybody to be on the same page, literally, with what we're doing. And so if you do have the schedule, the outline for the art workshop, we are on week 6. And last week we touched on a couple of things we will be talking about this week as well, such as your cover and logo design for your work. And if those who really want to go on to create a small business out of this opportunity, then today is really going to be important for you. Take notes, pay attention, because these things, in addition to your story, in addition to what you submit, your illustrations, your panels for your graphic novel or your chapters and illustrations for your chapter book, this is something on top of that you need to be thinking about. This is not due until when you submit your work. You even have a little more time after that to flesh out the ideas more, and so I don't want you to feel really super pressured about it. The main thing, really, if you do feel super pressured, is to focus on the story aspect. Just make sure that that's solid. Make sure you follow the parameters, the guidelines of the workshop, and we want to keep all those things in mind. Now, everyone should have their story written. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that now we're working on the illustrations. We're actually working on putting the pages together. We talked about the ingredients that you need. Your story, of course, following a good solid story, writing, storytelling, story building with your plot, your rise of action, your antagonist, your conflict, your resolution. All of these things are important. And those elements need to be expressed in your story. Proper illustration, how do you illustrate a story? We talked about that. We talked about defining what is the conflict in your story. Maybe we should do an illustration on the conflict on certain pages. What parts of your story are important to put into an illustration form? Those of you doing chapter books, this is really important because you're going to be identifying in your illustration or your drawing elements of the story that are important, okay? Because you don't have very many illustrations with the chapter book. You have one at the beginning of each chapter. You have your cover art. But also it's good to put in a few drawings inside of the chapters. Those are not mandatory, but it is important to put some additional drawings in there. So since you don't have as many drawings with the chapter book, you have to be really selective on what it is you are going to draw. That pertains to your story. So these are things you have to really think about. The students that I spoke with today, they're both doing a chapter book. I love chapter books. Short chapters, of course, this isn't a very long workshop. You don't have a whole lot of time to really put this together. I understand that. But last workshop we had a chapter book called the Confessions of a Jailbird. That was at Betsy Lane High School. And they did it really well. They had only a few pages per chapter, but the chapters were all transitional. So that means that each chapter built on itself. The chapters, her method of doing it was that each chapter was a different setting or a different aspect to the story. And that's important with chapter building. You have to know, when does a chapter end? When does a new chapter begin? And when that happens, what are you going to be writing about? What's the difference between chapter 1 and chapter 2? How are you carrying the plot across all your chapters to the resolution of the story? How does that work? Those are things you have to think about. Now, when I say that, it sounds really hard. It sounds difficult, but it's not. We all love stories. We partake in stories every day, even small segments of other people's stories. A lot of social media aspect is hearing about someone's story. Maybe it's just that day. Well, what's your story for the day? How was your day? How did your day go? I'm not a real big social media guy. I have to put my stuff up online because all my stuff is visual. So in order for someone in Arizona to look at my illustration work or my portfolio, back a long time ago, you would mail that. you would get copies of your work and you'd stick it into an envelope and you'd mail it off to Arizona or wherever. It's a lot easier now. Now you just need a web page. And a web page is something we're going to talk about today too, or in terms of the people going on to create a business out of this workshop. Okay? Before we get started, and I'm still kind of in the what I call the house, a little bit of housework here to do before we really get started. I want to talk a little bit now about the words on the page. There are a few questions that came through, and so everybody's clear on this, okay? So for chapter books, your pages are set up so that all of your story is pretty much going to be a typed out document that you submit, okay? This is going to be the interior. We'll say the first pages 3 and 4, okay? Page 1, of course, is going to be your interior title, perhaps, or your copyright if you really want to get in detail. But so your pages will be submitted in a Word document, right? Okay. But at the break of each chapter, and I drew this out last time, so we'll put chapter 1. This is where your artwork needs to take place at the beginning of the chapter. So chapter break, artwork. Chapter 2, artwork. Chapter 3. Now, there's a few options on how to place the chapter, defining chapter title on the page with your artwork. You could draw that on there. You could print it out in the same font as your interior text and then maybe enlarge it, increase the font size and put that on there. So you could glue it onto your artwork and then you send that in just as it is. You'll send this page in with the glue text or font on the page with your packet. So we'll do all the scanning. For those who get published, we'll do all the scanning, the 35 students, and cleaning up this and making it so that it looks nice in print. Okay. Now when we talk about, I'll use a different color here, maybe to help. When we're talking about our picture books, of course, we talked about placing the words on the page, and there's a few ways to do that. One of the ways to do that is to, of course, draw out the words. Last time we looked at The Bug Without a Home, something I just made up. And so you can draw the words on the page or write the words on the page along with your characters, okay? So that's one option. Or you can type the words out on a Word document and make sure the size of your font is large enough and glue that to your page. So those are your options, okay? Again, when you're submitting this at the end, you want to just send it in with the artwork and the glued text or font on that as well. So you don't have to do any scanning yourself and sending me copies or anything, okay? I want to share with you a couple of things that I've been working on. One of those is this elk design for Elkhorn City, promotional. Now, I'm not really sure if anyone's ever been to a store like Hobby Lobby before or something, but this elk will be actually on a page, an old book page. So the illustration is going to be created, which is just a printout of where I am now. So it's not finished at all. This elk will be placed on top of an old book page, and large prints are going to be made. And so that's in promotion for Elkhorn City. Illustration work, and I brought this up for a reason. Whenever you're creating your illustrations, we're moving into the color aspect of it. So how to color. We went into basic drawing, have 2 tutorials on that on the holler.org, so check those out. It's not enough to, there's tons of material out there to help you learn how to get a harness on the tools for basic drawing. So don't feel overwhelmed, but the tutorials that I've created will help because it talks about materials. You don't need fancy pens and pencils. I created my first work with a Sharpie and a number 2 pencil. So you don't need anything fancy, but it does help you to understand what materials are available. Now, when we get into color, that's different, okay? I created this image using two different types of coloring technique. The first was watercolor, so I used watercolor to color this, and then the second was digital. So I went in and then shaped up the drawing a little bit more using digital, okay? I have to now There's a couple of exercises that I'm doing. This is a page from Bruce Parsons is the creator of theholler.org, and he's also a writer and a film director too, documentarian, and a few more things. He wrote a graphic novel called Mockingbird, and I brought an original page in today. And as you can see, those of you that are working on the graphic novel, so you can see just about how big this piece of paper is with me holding it. It's a little larger than a 17 by 11, but it's actually it is a 17 by 11, so never mind. This is the exact same size. So, but you can see by my finger on the panels, you can fit a lot onto this area, this type of page, and the size. There's a lot you can do. I have 5 rows of panels on this page. Every page I create for him has an average of 5 rows of panels. So a row is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? From left to right, the panels that appear. On average, there's 2 to 4 panels per row, usually around 3. When you get into 4, you can see how that would really shrink up stuff. But some parts of the story call for that. Okay? So those of you working on a graphic novel, this is a really important example, because look at my boxes. Okay? Look at my panels. The lines that I've created, I don't just take a pencil. Sorry to keep jumping out of screen, but I don't just take a pencil and a ruler and lay my ruler down and then draw these boxes, right? And I make one pass at it, one line, and okay, there's my large box, and now I'm going to use my ruler, and I'm going to draw the smaller boxes inside here. This is one row of boxes. No, this is not how I do it. What I'll do is I'll take the ruler, and I'll literally make one line, and just imagine that this is one giant panel. I'll make one line at the top for my, a line that goes to the top of the panel. I'll place the ruler underneath just a bit, and I'll make another line parallel to that line, okay? So that I have 2 lines parallel to one another, and then I'll go in and I'll ink in between those 2 lines. And what that does is it gives me a very large, thick, nice border around my panels. Those of you doing graphic novels, please take a little more time not to just draw in one line for the borders on your panels, okay? It looks much more professional to color those in. So you can see the difference between just sketching out the box for these panels and then taking time to really make my borders nice and thick and solid on this example, okay? So that's important too. I brought another example to share with you today. This is I started working as the cartoonist, the editorial cartoonist for the Appalachian News Express 2 weeks ago. I've done editorial work in Lexington for the Kentucky Kernel, which is UK's paper, North of Center, and a few more papers. And so I always wanted to work at home here since I live in Eastern Kentucky, but it just never worked out. I can't produce one each day. I'm too busy, but I agreed to do one a week on the weekend edition. So those of you who get the paper, be sure and pick up each weekend edition of the Appalachian News Express, and my comics are in there. So those of you who want to see some of that work. Editorial cartooning is a whole different topic than what we're talking about now, but I did want to share this because lettering with your comic, I'll hold this up sort of close. This is done by hand, right? So it's hand lettering. You can't really see that, I know. But so those of you who are creating a graphic novel, your option is to hand letter. When you hand letter, that means the story takes place inside of these elements like a caption box. So when you hand letter, my biggest advice to you is to lay down the ruler very lightly, draw lines. There's an Ames lettering guide, which is a tool that cartoonists use. I use one, and what it does is you can set it down on a piece of paper with a ruler, and there's little holes all on this little Ames lettering guide. And you set the millimeter percentage, the distance between each line. So I may set it at 0.4, and then that gives me a distance between these lines that are going to be consistent. right? So the distance between the first line and the second line and the third line are all the same. So when I go in then to letter, I'm able to create nice, nice clean lines that don't have these words that kind of go, are you there? And it's got this directional thing going down in my word balloon. Okay, so just place a ruler down. You don't need an Ames lettering guide. Place a ruler down and make lines before you start lettering your work. Okay. And the last thing I'm going to share with you is a little mini comic that I did for fun. This is something that I just created at home. I do these about maybe one every couple of years. I collected all the stories from the what I call the Bigfoot Hillbilly Survival Guide, which is something that I created because I noticed some things that were pretty funny, and I thought they would make a good story between a hillbilly and a Bigfoot. So I'm a hillbilly. Listen, I'm not gonna. I'll tell a little story. When I lived away from home, I was in the military. I would tell people where I was from, right? And I've got these questions, like as soon as I told them, questions like, do you all have police officers back there, or do y'all have courthouses? And I'm like, yeah, we even have we have judges and everything, really weird, strange questions. It's because people have these perceptions and those stereotypes, right? We have Hillbilly Days in Pikeville, Kentucky, here in Pike County. And those of you who live in all the various counties of the KVEC region, you should really come in and check out Hillbilly Days sometime. Hillbilly Days does not make fun of that stereotype. What it does is it acknowledges it and it demystifies it. Okay, what that means is when we say, hey, you know what? Yeah, hey, Hillbilly Days, come in. We dress up in our overalls and everything, and so by acknowledging that stereotype's there, okay, we take power away from it. And so when I created comics away from here, I'd always write about home. I would talk about in positive ways about home. But now that I live back home, I have the right to create the Hillbilly Bigfoot Survival Guide, I think. So maybe anyway. But no one's complained yet. But anyway, I do want to take a second while we're in the workshop today. And I keep jumping out of screen. I apologize for that, but I have to keep grabbing materials here, okay? We're going to talk about the logo for a second. So all of you who are participating that want to go on, let's say you say, okay, I hope I'm one of those 35 to be published. And if I am one of those 35 to be published, then I hope that I'm going to go ahead and apply to go on to be one of those 6 that will work on the entrepreneurial challenge for the governor has established. We're going to create a small business with our work. Those of you who are interested in that, this is important. Take notes on this, okay? We're going to be talking about a logo. Chapter books, picture books, doesn't matter. You need a logo. So if you're wanting to go on to be published, okay, you have to have a logo. And what we mean by logo is that you have to have an image or a symbol or something that identifies your published book as belonging to you, the creator. Think of little symbols that you see all the time. Nike, Apple, Under Armour, okay? Those sorts of things that we see. Those little symbols that we see, we identify immediately, and we know when we see that symbol that is a product of this type of company or business, right? There's nothing different with us. We need to create a logo. Now I shared with you Ted Hudson's logo. Ted Hudson has a circular logo. There's no rules to what shape your logo has to be. Ted's is circular. Inside of that, he has a drawing of himself, okay, at a table. And I'll try to do it the best I can here for you. And he's drawing on a piece of paper, of course, don't draw on your desk, and creating his work, right? So this is his logo, or as close as I can do without looking at it. I've seen it a bunch of times, but okay. So in his logo, this is what he has, and around his logo, all around Ted's logo, is Hudson Theater Productions. So a name. You have to have a name for your company. This doesn't have to reflect your book titles, because you see it can, but it doesn't have to. So under Hudson Theater Productions, Ted has created Noah's Ark and Snow White. Okay, his adaptation of those stories. Okay, underneath that business name. Now we have a large range of students participating, 4th to 12th grade, and it's hard for me to kind of present something that all grade levels can easily watch these videos, these workshops, and every student, every grade level understand. So teachers, I need your help, especially for younger students, to get them on board with creating this. Elizabeth Hall, she's in Jackson, Kentucky. She was one of the published students from last workshop, and she wrote the cake. I'm drawing a blank on the title of it now. But it was a beautiful little illustrated story about a bird and a cow that were friends, and they stole a cake from a bakery because they were hungry and had no money, and it was a really good story. She created this amazing simple logo for her work. So her teacher, guided her through the process, explained it more in depth, so I need your help in doing that, okay? Your logo should symbolize whatever you value, something about yourself, okay? I've done a couple of logos for local authors. One of those is Mary Powell. Well, we'll talk about Abby Combs, because Abby Combs wrote a brilliant story called Holding the Light, okay? And she wanted to have a logo that represented her values, okay? And as it turns out, she said, I want a lighthouse, okay? And so the lighthouse, the design that I created, has these lights, these beacons, okay? So these rays of light coming out from it, okay? Something like this. And then at the top, the name of her publishing company. So your logo needs to show the public, when they look at it, a little something about you, okay? All right. I'm running out of sheets. Do we have another thing of paper? Right there. Can we borrow that one maybe for a second? Okay. I'm running out of graph paper as we speak, but that's okay. We have more. Tanya's awesome. She's going to help me. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, let's stick this on here. Awesome. So create a logo, okay? Have your logo ready, so when you send in your work, we want to be able to see that you've created that as well. So on top of the logo, we need your business name, and I'm going to write this out for you. You've got your logo, okay? Your business name. And this is what you're going to be sending in, okay? Your story plus illustrations. And again, when you send in your story and your illustrations, send in your words glued. If you glue words to the page, send those in exactly how they are, with the words glued on the illustration, okay? We're going to be publishing 35 students. Those 35 students will have their work scanned, cleaned up like I mentioned earlier, okay? We're going to take a second now, and we're going to talk about your synopsis and your foreword. And this is really important because, like I mentioned last workshop and the work before, when someone comes up to you and asks you, what is your story about, you should be able to tell them what your story is about within a couple of sentences. Okay? In those couple of sentences, you usually, a synopsis or a foreword will talk about the parts or the elements of the story. It won't reveal anything, so you don't tell, what happens to the main character in the foreword or the synopsis, but you talk about the story. Okay, so for a synopsis, include important elements. Okay, character, plot, setting, so these things are elements of your synopsis, okay? The D part, which is going to be if you add an antagonist, you could talk about that, but it falls under character really. You don't want to tell how does the story end. You want the reader to want to read your book, okay? Now, like I said before too, 4th grade to 12th grade, wide range of students. I don't know what your required reading is in class. It's different for every class, school I mean. So I have no idea. Some things will be the same across the board. Other things won't, right? I have no idea what you're reading or enjoy at home. I have no clue. So the best way for me to talk about a synopsis is to talk about film and movies, because I do have a gut feeling a lot of us has watched Harry Potter or Star Wars. That's just I don't know, it's just a feeling I have. But so for, let's say, Star Wars, let's say the episode, I think it was, I don't know, it was the first older movie, episode 4 maybe. In that film, the synopsis of the film could be something like, a young man finds his destiny to become a part of the, let's see, a young man finds his destiny by through the conflicts he has with his father. Now, okay, that would reveal that Darth Vader is his father, but you get the idea. I don't know a good synopsis for Star Wars, but you get the idea. The synopsis has elements of the story, but it doesn't reveal the ending, which my synopsis for Star Wars just did, so don't do that. So think about this in terms of how you would describe your book to someone else. If someone came up to you and said, hey, that's pretty cool, you're published. What's your book about? And you should be able to tell them. My book, Irby's Turn to Rake, it was, and I can tell you exactly what it was. A young pollywog learns that admitting his mistakes is much easier than running from them. That was it, okay? That was the entire synopsis of my story. One sentence, easy and done. And in the story, that's what happens. Irby, who's a pollywog, makes a mistake. Instead of admitting he made the mistake, he decides to run as far north as he can away from his village. And he's never been away from home before. And that leads into a lot of trouble for Irby because, well, he has no idea what he's doing. So that's the synopsis of my story. Now let's talk about a foreword for a second. A foreword might be a little longer, okay? You find a foreword in the beginning of the book, okay? A foreword is going to talk about your book, okay? It's going to go a little more depth. It's going to include those elements we talked about earlier, all right? But you may go into even more detail. You may even go into why you wrote the book, okay? You might say your inspirations, okay? You can include a foreword in your story. It's not mandatory, but it would help a great deal to have this in your book. So why I wrote the story? You may talk about important parts of the story without giving anything away, right? Okay. You may talk about how you would like people to use your story. What can people gain from reading this story? Okay. So, what can people take away from reading your story? The absolute best way to understand what these elements are, a synopsis or a foreword, is to go and read something similar to what you want to create, okay? Last session we talked about copyright page, we talked about interior title pages, those things. If you go and you pick up a book and you open that book you're going to see similar parts and constructions of what we call the front matter in the industry. Your front matter is everything before the start of the story. It could be a dedication page. You want to include a dedication page, that's perfectly fine. A foreword, the copyright page, and interior title pages. Those things are front matter. Happens before the start of your story. If you want to include those things in your packet you're sending in, please do. It will not hurt your chances to become published. If anything, it'll help it, okay? You may include different parts. You may say, I don't want a dedication page, but I will put a foreword and an interior title page in there. It's up to you, okay? All right. We're going to talk just a second before we close about something that is very important to the submission process once we're finished. And here's the thing. We have 8 weeks. We're in week 6 right now, okay? We're going to extend the time to turn in your final product for a couple more weeks, okay? So we're going to give students more time to put your stories together, all right? So the workshop ends October 31st. So if we could just say the middle of November, submit your stories, that will be fine, okay? I want everybody to not feel pressured and stressed in this process. I want you to enjoy it. So about the middle of November, we'll give a hard deadline. Maybe in week 7, next week, we'll give a hard deadline. So where you should be right now with everything, your story should be done. You wrote your story. You started to put the illustrations on the, finish your illustrations, and you start to put the words on the page, okay? And as you're finishing your drawings and putting the book together, those elements should be in the back of your mind about your logo and your front matter. So if I want to include an interior title page, dedication page, so on and so forth, okay? That's where we are. If you've just started writing your story, you need to catch up. Go to theholler.org, search for the Art Workshop Holler, and get involved in creating this and following those weeks of examples we've posted to the holler.org. Okay? If you have any examples of your artwork or anything else you want to share, send those in. I will be creating another tutorial today that will be posted no later than tomorrow morning. It takes a long time for me to upload these videos from my shop, but usually about 4 hours to clean up a video, edit it, and then post it, and then that's the recording time before that's probably about 2 hours, so about 6 hours, so a lot of time. But look for that video. It should be up no later than tomorrow morning, okay? All right, we'll talk a little bit about basic drawing, and then we're going to close out. Those of you who are feeling a little overwhelmed, please don't, okay? I talk about the circle method. I had a student, I'm co-teaching a course up at the university, okay? And in that course, I have a student who's never really drawn much before, and they created a character, and the character pretty much is a stick figure, right? But it's not about your drawings, it's about the story. I can't stress that enough. And I sat with the student, and I worked with him to fill in a little more. So let's say that you're having trouble with the illustrations. If you take a basic shape, such as a circle and about 4 or 5 lines, okay? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, and you put those and arrange those together so that when you look at it, you can tell, okay, that's a person's head, shoulders, arms, and torso, okay? If you can do that, you can draw, because you have right here the basic foundation for a drawing. All you have to do once you have this is add to it. That's it, okay? So very lightly with a pencil, I would sketch out this circle, these lines. Then I'd go back to this design, and what I would do is I would start to fill it in more, right? So what I may do is just put an ear on the side of the head here, right? Okay? I may draw some hair on the top of the head, on the top of the circle. You can see how that works. This looks a little too wide here, so I may shape it up more to bring it down to a chin. Now this is pressing down lightly with your pencil the entire time, okay? And once you have this shape, you can build on it. You can keep erasing and playing with it till you get where you want to be. Now remember, all this orange you see is me pressing down very lightly with my pencil. So once I get to this part, I have these lines that make up arms, right? I don't want to follow these lines exactly, but I want to use those as a guideline or a blueprint. So I may draw on top of it. I may add shoulders coming out. Okay? And the torso coming down. Once you have that basic shape that you need, you can build on it, right? I always draw a line going down the center of where the face, so if the head is pointed in a certain direction, if I'm looking straight on, my character is looking straight on, the line will be straight up and down. If I'm looking at a profile shot a little bit like this one, the line is going to be over here. You can see this side of the head, you can see that ear, so you know that the eyes and the nose and the mouth are going to be farther over to the right, okay? And then I might start to add smaller details. I might place a nose in there like that, something simple, nothing too major. A simple line for a smile, okay? And then I may put some eyebrows in there to kind of give me an idea of where the eyes will be. And then I may just add a couple circles for the eyes. It's literally that simple to build upon a foundation that you have for drawing, okay? But you need that foundation first. And in the videos, tutorials, I talk about going back over it, tracing over it with ink, okay? You trace over your pencil lines with ink, and once you do that, you allow your pencil lines to dry, your ink lines to dry, and once they dry, you go back and you erase. You just take an eraser and go over top of all of your drawing, and all those pencil lines magically disappear, and what's left is your inked lines, okay? But if you want to see more about tutorials with this type of technique, go to theholler.org, go to the Art Workshop Holler, Art Workshop, and check those out. They're available. Excuse me. Okay, talk about next week for a second before we close out. We're going into week 7 now, okay? And all those elements I talked to you about earlier should be finished. We're working on coloring your pages, building those illustrations right now as we speak. Today I'm going to be posting a tutorial on color. So we're going to be talking about what are your options for color at your school. It's different for every school. I know Wolf County, Wolf County High School does not have an art class. So the students that participated in a workshop a while back, they needed art supplies. We gave them some money to buy art supplies with, and so I know it's different for every school. Most of us though have access to crayons, color pencils, watercolor. At the dollar store, you can buy a nice palette of watercolor for like $1.50, okay? That's Crayola. If you need art supplies, I have some available, okay, of my own that was donated to me. So if your school or your class needs art supplies, please contact me on theholler.org. You can message me on there, or you can email me. And here's my email address. I'll write it out for you, okay? It's, well, I'm wasting paper. I'll go back to the one that I haven't used very much. I've used all of it. I hate to waste paper, but it looks like I'll have to do this so you can see it. Epling, my last name, E-P-L-I-N-G, okay? Illustrations, ILLUSTRATIONS. I wanted to pick a really nice, small email address. I think we'll make it too complex. All right, eplingiLlustrations@gmail, okay? If you email me, let me know you need art supplies. I have a bunch, okay, that are available for schools and students that need art supplies. Email me. I will ship you some to your school. No problem, okay? Thank you all so much for participating. Thank you, Pikeville High School, for having us. You guys have been great welcoming us here. Next week, we're going into week 7. We're excited about closing up this workshop. I'm really excited about seeing what you've been creating. And please post some of your progress on theholler.org, okay? And good luck, and I can't wait to see your work. Check out for the tutorial. Everybody wave bye, please. Bobby? Bobby's here with me, too. Say bye, Bobby.
We're Johnson County next week.
Johnson County. Thank you for reminding me. Johnson, you just know Johnson County?
Johnson County.
Okay, I think it. All right, Johnson County next week. Thank you. Thanks, Mom.
Thank you, Chris. This is wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Desi.
Thanks, Desi.
Hi, Bobby.
Okay.
Thank you, Desi.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good one.
I'm gonna draw something for you guys before I leave. Is that okay? I'm gonna show you a little something. I was gonna do this on today's video, but you want to tell me more about your story? While I draw, I'd like to hear about it. I'm gonna get my phone first here.
Well, right now I'm still kind of fleshing it out. That's really, I don't know how much I'm going to change at this point because I over-edit myself all the time. So
Okay.
that's kind of,
So is that something that you, it's like you'll rewrite and rewrite and rewrite?
yes. It's,